welcome to your first anatomy lecture. Today is going to be all about medical terminology. So I just want to share a couple of reminders. These I talked about in class already, but just a couple of good study strategies that might work for you. So this is the first one. Make sure you're using your book. So you might want to read your book in advance of what we do in class on the topic. Take notes on paper is helpful for many people, or now that we have iPads, you could write, but in Notability, but actually write the words instead of typing. And then kind of going back and looking at your notes and what's in the textbook and filling in any gaps you may have missed. So that's one strategy. Today, we're going to be talking about elements of medical words, and there's another strategy. Like I said, I already talked about it a little bit, but it's going to be very useful, I think, for many of you kind of throughout your anatomy study, not just with terms, but with all kinds of different things. So, medical words are often broken up into several parts. If you break down the word into its parts, a lot of times you can figure out what it's talking about, even if you don't know the Latin or Greek that the word is based on. So a lot of the words you might come across will seem kind of weird. They might have a weird spelling or pronunciation. It is going to be very important that you spell things correctly, because if these were being used in a medical setting, a clinical setting, that spelling could make a serious difference in a patient's treatment. So spelling counts. But what we'll look at today are kind of the parts that make up the words, and then that will give you, like I said, a good way to practice spelling them, but also figuring out maybe words that you're not familiar with. You just break it down and you'll be able to figure out what it means. So this, again, I talked a little bit about already in class. And this is one method of kind of helping you remember things using the way your brain works. So this is the strategy of a mnemonic device. And we think of a mnemonic device a lot of times as like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally from math to know the orders of operations. I think that's right. Or like, my very eager mother just served us nachos for the order of the planets. But mnemonic devices can be a little more involved as well. And so this is one of those examples. So this, you take the medical word in this idea, and then you take something that kind of sounds like it that you're familiar with. So in the picture we have gast, which is referring to the stomach, and then that sounds a little bit like gas truck. It's like a fuel tanker. And so you kind of imagine, or you could even draw, if you're a drawing type person. I am not, you will find. So you could draw the truck, and then the stomach is taking the place of the tanker. And because you are linking this unfamiliar element, this unfamiliar medical term, with something you are familiar with, it activates connections in your brain that make it more likely that you're going to be able to retrieve the information in the future. So I will share with you throughout this course different mnemonics that I still remember from when I was in college learning anatomy. But I always encourage you to come up with your own that work for you, because having that connection to your own life is going to make it an even better tool for you to remember the words. So try out mnemonic devices. Okay, so medical words, I said, are made up of parts generally. They start out with a word root. So these are usually Greek or Latin words, and a lot of times they indicate a body part. So when I go through them in just a second, you'll see that you're kind of familiar with some of them, I imagine, already. When we get to medical terms, when we put them together, usually there will be kind of one word root, maybe two, and then you'll add prefixes and suffixes to make the complete medical term. Sorry. So, oftentimes, the word root has a vowel added to the end of it to make what's called a combining form. So that allows a suffix, really, to be added to the end of the word to make it like a complete phrase. So you'll see kind of a weird -o notation. That's what it's referring to. It's that combining form so that it can make a bigger word. Whoops. Okay, so here are the combining forms that you must know this year. We will learn some more kind of as we go through the different body systems, but these are kind of the main, big, important ones. So I'm going to pause my talking. I'll go through and write the terms' meanings down, and then I'll come back with my talking and say a couple things about them. Okay, so I've written in the meanings of the words. I would suggest, again, that you write these yourself, either on paper or in Notability or on flashcards, because that really, with words that are unfamiliar, that can be a good way to kind of reinforcing them in your brain, that act of like action, the physical writing, along with reading. Maybe you say it aloud. Hearing it can be helpful. So I'm just going to quick run through a few of these. So cardio is heart, dermato is skin, nephro and reno both refer to kidneys. They're used in a little bit different context, but both kidneys. Pneumo is lungs, hepato is liver, arthro is joints, like arthritis, an issue with the joints. Osteo is bones, cerebro is brain. You've seen the X-Men, it might give you a linking place for that one. So that's brain. Neuro is nerve. And then, gastro, stomach. Patho is disease. And then rhino is nose. So those are our combining forms. Now we're going to look at the suffixes and prefixes that can be used to make these into actual medical terms. So a suffix comes at the end of the word. You probably remember this from like elementary school, I imagine, is when we learned about prefixes and suffixes. So a suffix is an ending. It tends to indicate procedures, conditions, diseases, or sometimes just like the part of speech, whether it's a verb or noun or something. So again, there's a few of these that you'll need to know this year. There are many, many, many others. There's a whole course called Medical Terminology where you just learn terminology for all the parts of the body. So this is just a jumping off point. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing again. I'll pause and write in the meanings. And then this time I will just mention some of them, not all of them. Okay, so here are the suffixes you need to know. Some of them, again, you're probably familiar with, like ology. We've talked about that in biology, study of something. Itis is one that you might be familiar with just from, you might not even know that you're familiar with it, but like tonsillitis or arthritis, that's inflammation. So tonsillitis, tonsils are inflamed. Arthritis, get arthro as our word root. That means joints. So arthritis is inflammation of the joints. Ectomy, like a tonsillectomy, or an appendectomy, that means a removal of something. Megaly, mega is like big, so it's an enlargement. Philia is an attraction to something. Hemophilia is a condition, it's a clotting disease. And so the name comes from like attraction to blood because the blood didn't stop bleeding. Pathy can be like a feeling, like neuropathy is like you feel tingling in your nerves even though there's no outside effect. It can also kind of refer to disease, as Path did in the previous slide. Phobia is a fear of something, like arachnophobia. Oid refers to something's like shape or having a resemblance to something else. So there might be like a fibroid that looks like fibers. And then osis is a diseased condition of something. So make sure you read through the list and remember those. Okay, and then so we have our word endings. Now we need our word beginnings. So prefix can change the meaning of the word. It indicates most of the ones we are going to talk about are going to be sort of position and directional. They could also indicate like numbers, times, or negation. So let's go. Okay, so prefixes. Again, some that you probably know already. A in front of something means not. It's like anonymous is not named. Ambi is both, like ambidextrous. You can use both your hands to write or do something. Ante is before. In history class, in U.S. history, you might have learned about the antebellum period before the Civil War. Anti is against. So this prefixes page has some of the trickiest of the medical terms. So anti and anti, they mean very different things, but they're spelled pretty similarly, so that's something to watch out for. Bi and di both refer to kind of two. Bi means two. It's like we're bipedal. We have two legs. Or we walk on two legs. Di is like twice or double. So like carbon dioxide, for instance. Hyper and hypo are two that you likely are familiar with already, especially hyper means like high or excessive. It's like if someone has high or excessive energy, we might call them hyper. Hypo is the opposite of that, under or below something. So you're hypoglycemic, low blood sugar, for instance. Now, the last sort of bunch, epi, infra, intra, trans, inter, not so much peri. They can be a little bit confusing. Again, you just have to be really careful to mind your vowels, pretty much. So epi means on or over. Epinephrine is a chemical. It's a steroid produced when we're under stress. And you might have like an EpiPen if you have an allergy to something like a bee allergy. And so epinephrine is produced above the kidneys in the adrenal glands. So that's how it gets its name, from being over the nephron, right? The kidneys. Infra means below or beneath. So that you might be familiar with from like infrared. It's below red. Intra is within. So like something's inside. Trans is across. So like a transplant, you're taking something and putting it from one person across to another. Inter is between. So there's like intercostal muscles, which go between the ribs. And then peri is around. It's like the pericardial sac is what the heart sits inside of. So just like I said, write these out, practice a little bit with them. Once we start using them, they'll become a lot more familiar just because we're using them more. So just like with chemistry, when some of the things were new and weird, when we first started learning naming, for instance, it gets a lot better as you practice and use it. So don't fret. So to get the word or to pick apart a word, you just either put it all together to make a word, or you can take it apart to figure out what a word means. Okay, so for homework, there is going to be a medical terminology, a med-term quiz, quotation marks around the quiz, for practice. I'm going to set it up like a quiz in Schoology, but it's not an actual quiz. So use your notes, use your book if you have it. Try multiple times if you need to. I just want to kind of check in and see how we're doing to know where to start on Thursday. So do that. Make sure you do that. It'll be due at the end of class, the end of school today. If you need to keep taking it, like if you want to try again, you can keep doing that. But I want everyone to do it at least once today, Monday. And then you can take a look, if you have time, at the medical terminology circuit assignment. We will work on that for 15 minutes together in your breakout groups. We'll try on Thursday. That's kind of where we'll start with any questions. So take a look at it if you get a chance, and then we'll go from there. So thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your day.